5 so far.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a Elastic Community Meetup. This morning, we're joined by Bradley Hoskins, who is one of our Elastic Solution Architects based in Minneapolis. Today, he'll be presenting on app development on Azure with Elastic App Search and APM. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to just add those to the chat on the right-hand side, and we'll get those answered at the end with any leftover time. But with that, I will turn it over to you, Bradley.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. As she mentioned, the goal today is to talk about what Elastic is doing specifically with Microsoft in Azure, and using Elastic to deploy a quickly deploy a search solution. So and monitor that search solution as well. So I've been with Elastic over 2 years now. Served as a solutions architect throughout this time, helping out enterprise customers in the area, as well as commercial. So if you've seen my face before, thanks for joining today. If you haven't, nice to meet all of you. So let's get into the agenda. So I'll just give a quick introduction on what is Elastic, a high-level overview of the Elastic and Microsoft partnership itself, some of the a use case, and then walking through user story scenarios and using Elastic to basically quickly solve and solution those user story scenarios. I'll be demoing basically throughout this. There's 3 user story scenarios we'll jump through, and then a quick demonstration, and then we'll do a wrap up. Feel free to throw any questions into the chat. I'll try and capture them and respond to them here. Happy New Year, and let's get rolling. So a couple quick things to think about. How many times have you searched this week? Really, I was thinking about this before this demonstration, and I've probably searched at least 20 to 30 times this morning, getting my kids ready for school and checking the weather and things like that. There's just expectations you have as a consumer that search is a part of your life each and every day. And basically, the question is, what happens if they don't find what they need? Think of an e-commerce scenario. They basically usually just go to another site to find what they're looking for, and that's a loss in revenue. You're not gaining much popularity. Everyone uses search, and they have pretty high expectations naturally as to how that experience should work. Now, there are a ton of search experiences driven by Elastic, some that you know, some that you don't know. Here is a great one that's for Yelp on any reviews of restaurants or that type of thing. But basically, everyone's trying to find something in a marketplace, a help center, a catalog. They look for a particular part or whatever it may be. And there's valuable information in every single tool you deploy. So now, a great customer search experience can make or break your relationship. So a couple great metrics to keep in mind of is 1.6 trillion is lost every year in the US alone due to poor customer service. Bad search experience aligns with customer service. 90% of customers expect your organization to offer self-service customer support. So yeah, just, there's enough business value in a great search experience, just driven through understanding what your customer come to the website look for and what they define. So now the good thing is Elastic is the most popular search solution in the market. in terms of search engines on dbengines.com, we're number one. And it's used pretty readily across the enterprise to deliver those search solutions. And really, Elastic provides this enterprise search solution, out of the box solution, to make it easy to build a search experience without having to have a ton of experience on some of the nooks and crannies of building a good search experience, like type ahead search, typo tolerance. Building relevance to what your customers are doing is hard. With enterprise search, it makes these things a lot easier. Now, enterprise search falls under a tier of one of the three search solutions solutions that we focus on at Elastic. There's obviously we'll focus on enterprise search and observability. Observability is around capturing logs, metrics, traces, and synthetic monitoring, uptime monitoring, any sort of data that is going to give you an idea on how well your application or anything that's being deployed is performing. And then finally, security is the ability to not only provide an ability to search for certain scenarios. I know a popular 0 day that's happened over the holiday season, which I'm sure a lot of you have spent some time around, is this whole log4j thing. The log4j shell 0 day that's come out. You could use Elastic Security, and there's a great blog about using Elastic Security to identify this type of activity. Just any Java processes that may be using log4j, and any beaconing activity outside of your organization's firewall. So providing a platform to search for any of that activity, whether it's happening now or whether it happened 6 to 12 to 12 months ago, up to 3 years ago, it could be any time frame. Elastic and the stack can help build out a policy to hold on to the data and provide a search experience on top of petabytes of data, and return those queries very fast. And then the second piece of this that comes to, when it comes to security, is endpoint protection. So we want to stop things before they happen. We just don't want to monitor and investigate things after they happen. And that's where Elastic Agent, Fleet, and our endpoint security component comes in very handy. So it provides malware protection, ransomware protection, memory threat protection. So all sorts of stuff. That is a whole subject in its own that we'll not get into. But if you're interested, there's a ton of content out there that we provide in that space. Now, these solutions are delivered by one stack. So as soon as you understand the stack, then understanding these solutions becomes a lot easier. But you can work from the top down or the bottom up, whatever your role or responsibility is. Beats, Logstash, and Elastic Agent, I mentioned earlier, are ways to get data into Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch, as I mentioned earlier, is that that number one database for search and building a search solution. And then Kibana is what we use to visualize whether you're investigating an issue as a security analyst, or whether you're building a search experience, being in marketing, tuning synonyms within enterprise search, or you're a DevOps engineer or a site reliability engineer and have to figure out, hey, why did my application break? Now, the best thing, and something we've worked on over the past year, is making it easier to deploy Elastic in the cloud. So we have a ton of options. I'm only going to focus on one option, which is deploying through Azure Marketplace, and I'll show a quick demonstration of that. And that's using what we call as our SaaS service, or Elastic Cloud. Elastic Cloud gets away, basically avoids all of the administrative tasks of maintaining the hardware, the lifecycle management of the Elastic stack, and a ton of other things. It just removes a lot of complexity when you try to self-manage this product. There's also a ton of other benefits that come with it, things like auto scaling, private link, which we'll talk about here in a second. So if you're deploying Elastic today, I think the only way to do it is to deploy in Elastic Cloud. Now, as a part of our partnership with Microsoft, we identified a couple of goals to make it easier for customers to consume Elastic. So a couple of those goals include provide our customers a fully supported integrated portfolio offering, integrated experience for discovery and deployment of Elastic services on Azure, which I'll show in just a second. Seamless integration so that if you have Azure AD, for example, and you log into Elastic Cloud, it easily gets you to where you want to go. And then accelerating the delivery of solutions, whether it be from a security perspective, providing private link, or forwarding logs directly from Azure services to Elastic Cloud so that you can provide that seamless integration to collect those events without having to build out custom pipelines or things like that. So before we jump into this sample case scenario, I thought instead of talk about it, let's just show you what that experience is like. So if you are accustomed to Microsoft Azure, this should look very familiar. You have the ability to search for all of the services that are readily available. Now, as a part of our marketplace offering, Elasticsearch is in the portal itself. So if you search for Elasticsearch, you will see some additional offerings come up. This is the one that I mentioned, is this Elasticsearch or Elastic Cloud. Now, we already have a ton of deployments. You may or may not, but it's as simple as creating this deployment and then walking through some of the basics of the things that are needed. So a couple of details here. You have to select the resource group that this resource will get charged to. One of the benefits is no longer do you have to go through Elastic to purchase Elastic. You can simply go through this process, and any sort of billing goes directly through Azure. It also consumes any sort of committed spend you have with Azure already. So a great way to consume that spend using Elastic Cloud. So we identify the resource group, the resource name, what region we want to deploy in. When it comes to, we do have a ton of regions. I won't say we cover all of them, but I'd say 70 to 80% of the Azure regions. And then the pricing plan that you so choose to. Now, once you've done that, you can select to actually start ingesting logs out of the box. So activity logs or resource logs are common logging categories to understand what different things are being deployed in Azure. So you can monitor not only what's being deployed, but who's deploying it. So from an audit perspective, it's great to see what activity has happened. And all those logs can flow directly into Elastic Cloud. And then resource logs, things that, these are quite chatty events. And what I'd say is turn them on, see if there is of value to you to have these events flowing in. Resource logs do capture like what resources are running. So, somewhat similar to activity logs, but activity is each and every individual activity. Resources simply say what resources are deployed now. Now you can filter out those things and whatnot, but once it's all deployed, then you'll see it running in your resource group, and you can start to actually do some pretty cool stuff. So a couple of things that come out of the box is once it's deployed, it automatically references you directly to Elastic Cloud and authenticates through single sign-on. So it'll go to that specific deployment you have running. So just right out of the box, I have Elastic and you're routed to Kibana, our visualization layer. Now, once you're in here, here's where Elastic Cloud is where you can scale up your instance. By default, we deploy like a particular size. And then in Elastic Cloud, you can configure the size to scale up or down that way. Another cool thing that we can do is actually go ahead and attach the Elastic agent to your set of virtual machines. So, for example, if you wanted to provide endpoint protection out of the box on all your Azure VMs, you install the Elastic agent, and then you provide basically endpoint protection through that mechanism, or can provide a policy to do all sorts of stuff. If you have IaaS servers that are deployed, we have an IaaS server integration that will automatically pick up HTTP logs, error logs. So it makes it really easy to ingest and see those events flowing in. So all you have to do is click on that particular instance and then install the extension, and then you can control through Elastic Cloud what things you want to deploy through Fleet. We're not going to jump into a ton of details regarding Fleet, but if you're interested in digging in more, there's a ton of blogs details around that. A couple other nice things that come with this integration, this marketplace integration, is say I want to understand for a particular server let's go back. Any particular services. So right here we have an app service, which we'll get into a little bit later. But if you scroll down to the bottom, there's this diagnostic settings. Okay. And most services we support today that you can basically set up and send certain events directly to your Elasticsearch instance. Things like the app service, HTTP logs, console logs, audit logs, platform logs, all those things are included. And you basically can configure these things to be sent directly to your Elasticsearch deployment. So one feature you get out of the box when you use Elastic as a native service through Marketplace in Azure. So if I just say I want to see the HTTP logs, send to a partner solution, and then there's my deployment right there. So once the configuration is applied, you should start seeing those HTTP logs flowing in. All right. One other thing I'll show you is kind of going back to the Microsoft and Elastic Cloud integration is the ability to, set up or configure your traffic filters. So you can set up IP address and CIDR blocks or use private link, and then it routes you directly to Elastic Cloud to set up those details. So these deployments don't have to be exposed externally. They can only talk to, if configured properly, obviously they only talk to the endpoints that are within your organization. So reducing the risk of running Elastic Cloud altogether, and it's a pretty seamless, easy to use integration. Now we'll continue to develop on this. I think this has been generally available for at least 6 months now, but ultimately, we want to make it easier for individuals who use Azure or organizations that use Azure to see Elastic as that native service to build search, observability, and security solutions. If you have any questions about the Microsoft Azure integration with Elastic, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll get to them. Okay, so now let's get down to our sample case scenario. I wanted to make it as easy as possible, but ultimately, I am someone who's a DevOps engineer. We don't have a ton of us on the team, and really the idea is that we want to preserve unimpaired the natural and cultural resources and values of national park system, making it easier for individuals to get information about those systems. So we want to build a better search experience on our website to increase education of the parks and increase attendance. Pretty simple. Now, the way we're going to do this is through a set of 3 user story focuses. So one is to easily and quickly deploy, removing any complexities for developers to run a website, make it easy to build a search solution and make search simple, and then easily scale and adapt as we see more traffic flowing into our system. Now, the first sprint, we'll call it a sprint, is basically saying, as a website visitor, I want to, and these are the things we're trying to solve, right? Find national parks in my state, find the closest airports to a national park, and basically just an easy search experience. Anyone should be able to build something. Now, I'm building this from scratch. We only have, basically a week to solve this, right? So we want to do something bare bones, but enough to solve those 3 challenges. Okay. So the way that I would do this is to use Elastic Cloud to deploy in Azure. So right out of the box, we have something we can build a search solution off of. And I need to be able to build this search solution quickly. So good thing Elastic provides what's called enterprise search. Now, at a high level, like I mentioned, enterprise search makes it easy to build this search solution. And the way we do this is simply by going into Kibana on this same application, this Elastic Cloud application I've deployed in Kibana. Select or create an engine. In this case, I've already created an engine. Now, the engines can be language specific. So if you're interested in other languages or being more specific around there, you can easily do that. Otherwise, there's this default engine that comes out of the box. National Parks is the engine name. And once these documents are uploaded into Elasticsearch, which you can do it through a simple API, so you can even index documents right from the UI or via pasting JSON, or use all of these different methods to get the data that you want searched into Elasticsearch. Now, once it's created, you get an overview of how many total queries are being submitted, total documents, total clicks, that type of thing. So just high-level analytics about not only what it is that we're searching over, but also the the things that people are searching over. Okay. Now I'm just gonna jump this over here quick. So the first requirement is to find national parks in my state. Now, what's really nice with app search is you can generate a search experience out of the box. We have this very simple search UI. It's a Node.js application where you basically decide what's the title field, what fields I want to filter by, sort by, and then any sort of URL descriptions to write to route you to the particular page for, in this case, a national park. So we'll just go ahead and do this. Let's filter by state and visitors. And then let's just say generate search experience. All right. So out of the box, just by ingesting, 70 different national parks in the United States, and trying to build out a search experience to filter by state, find parks in my state, we've built out this search UI. And if I search for example, Minnesota, boom, I have a quick filter for the state of Minnesota. So check. I've been able to do that. No problem. Next is find the closest airport to a national park. Okay. So interestingly, I could annotate the raw documents to include close like airports in the area. And what's cool about Elastic is we do support things like geospatial search queries, that type of thing. But I'm a little simplistic. So ultimately, I just want to uh, create some sort of synonyms to match. Um, and by default, and out of the box, you don't have to be like an application developer to do something like this. So let me show you. There's this option to create synonyms. I've already created one synonym for the redwood forest, but since I'm from Minnesota, and this is the Minnesota Meetup, we'll identify and find, okay, Voyagers um, is the national park in the state of Minnesota. The closest airport to Voyagers is actually Duluth International Airport. While it might be hard to get there, at least we want to identify that that's close to there, right? So we'll go ahead and create a synonym set. We'll add Voyagers with the set of synonyms that come with for that particular airport. Again, there's other ways to solve this, but this is one quick and easy, dirty way to do it. So that synonym set is created and automatically it's been applied. Now, when I search for example, DLH, Voyagers does come up. Another way to do this is you can promote different, let's see here. Yeah, so you can also create curations. So if I want to enter in a query for DLH, continue, and then I can promote or highlight one particular park. So we want to make this one the top one. And then we'll go back to manage queries, save. Actually, we'll add the other one. Duluth International Airport. And now if we go back to curations, that one should be there as well. And let's go ahead and test this. DLH, whoops. Doesn't like me today. Anyway, that should promote it to the top. We'll test it again one more time towards the end. So 2 ways to better the search experience based off of the users or the website visitors and what they're looking for. Now, how did I know that there were users that were looking for like typing in airports? Well, you can do that through analytics. So you can look at some of the top queries with no results, top queries, and how many clicks. So out of the box, we provide this analytics. And if you try to do this on your own, it's very challenging. But when you use enterprise search, it's easy to monitor your search experience and see if people are finding ultimately what they're looking for. Okay. Now, another part of this easy search experience is things like auto completion. So if I search for example, Glacier, it gives me some of the options that are readily available. Autocomplete comes out of the box with this search experience when you're using the Enterprise Search API as well. So I've built out this awesome search experience, pretty bare bones, but you get the idea, right? Now, I'm not so much. Now we'll move on to our next sprint. So let me share my screen here. Okay. So as a DevOps engineer, I want to iterate on code and deploy quickly, observe and alert on real user activity, and reduce operational costs while maintaining agility. Now, I'll talk about the last first, because there is no true demo regarding it. But really what it comes down to is the services and what Azure provides out of the box. So in this case, I'm using things like very popular product, Visual Studio's code. And I'm going ahead and setting up the Azure integration to push out this application very quickly based off of a project that I'm working on. So this is the National Park Search project, and I can easily deploy this to an app service without having to provision a virtual machine or anything like that. It's very simple. That's the integration I used. Another great integration is through GitHub. So let's go back here. Through GitHub, you can provision hooks. So anytime any updates are made to a particular project, that project gets automatically deployed through app service and makes it super easy to iterate over, change code and make changes to better the experience. So that's the first part, reducing operational costs and maintaining agility. And then iterating on code and deploy quickly, again, is through using things like GitHub, Visual Studio's code, and Azure App Service to do so. So those are more, those are common things. Azure Devops is another very popular tool to help instrument the deployment of code through it in different Azure services. So another very popular mechanism for doing that. So if we go back, I have this Azure app service, which is running. And then we're able to basically get an idea of some of the details that are flowing in through Azure Monitor and those types of things. Now, if you wanted detailed information about how the application is performing and create alerts, you can do that in Azure Monitor, but also Elastic provides what's called our APM solution, which gives you the same level of context as to how the application is performing and where those users are coming from. So I do have just a sample of what this looks like in Elastic. It's not specific to this service, unfortunately, but it gives you an idea of the different types of applications we can instrument out of the box. It works with Azure App Service. I've tested it with .NET, Node.js, that type of thing. And we do things like auto instrumentation across different endpoints, so you can see trace transactions flowing in. So if we just focus on, let's say, a Node.js application is what we're using today, you can get a pretty good idea of the metrics that we're collecting out of the box. So what's the latency of all of the different transactions? The throughput, how many transactions are happening per second? And then the different APIs that are being hit by our customers. Any errors that we see flowing in. And then as well, you can look at the instance type, which is the instance and details about the instance from a metrics perspective, CPU utilization, memory, that type of thing. Now, you can get even more granular. So in this case, we're looking at one individual transaction. And we'll wait for this to load. There we go. And even do things like comparisons. So I want to compare how my application performed, that day, which in this case we have February 3rd, to the day before. So we can map out performance metrics and see if things look different. Another cool feature is doing latency distribution, right? So these transactions have metadata attached to them, right? So it might be, for example, a particular client application used like Chrome or things like that. And we can see that there's some latency distribution or correlation between those things. So if there's a particular host name that's deployed or an app service that's moving a little bit slower, you'd be able to identify those correlations directly with Elastic APM. So in this case, there's no significant correlations, but maybe. And then you can see the full stack trace of all of the interactions that are happening, not just within this application, but the set of services that are also instrumented with Elastic APM. And then finally, hey, we need to not only like have these beautiful visualizations and dashboards on how well our application is performing, but we also want to create alerts. So I'll go back to my deployment here. And I think I have an application running from a while back. Let's say 12 months ago. Yeah. So here's when it was running. But if I wanted to go ahead and create an alert based off of latency, you can say, I want to check every minute for any sort of latency that's over 1500 milliseconds over the last 5 minutes. So this is alerts that you create out of the box. Very intuitive. It's click, I'm looking at this service. I'm focused on page load, whichever environment, that type of thing. And then once those alerts are created, you actually can send them to a plethora of connectors we provide out of the box. So ServiceNow, Slack, Microsoft Teams, you can receive alerts directly from Kibana to go and dig into those details. If ever you're exceeding an SLA from a query performance perspective, that all can be built and created directly here in the UI. So that's our second user story. And let's pull this back up. So now using GitHub as your app service, Elastic Cloud to observe the user activity, we're able to basically meet all of these 3 success criteria for this application. And a good example of this is Activision. And I don't know if anyone's a video game enthusiast, but Overwatch is, I wouldn't say it's super popular right now, but still a very active game. And Activision used Elastic to measure the performance of the consistency of their game as it was flowing through. So use Elasticsearch, Kibana to visualize and create alerts, making sure it was a good user experience, collecting logs, metrics, that type of thing. Now, finally, the last sprint here in this development is, as a product owner, I want to monitor the user search experience, promote, update, tune search results, and increase website visits. So I shared a little bit of this earlier, but going back to that enterprise search and app search UI, after you've created an engine, you can track the analytics. So total queries with no results, total clicks. Now, I don't think Iowa has a national park, so, but it's worth checking. But anyway, you can see pretty a high level of some of the top queries that are being submitted to just this sample application. Obviously, if it's something that's running in production, you're going to see and readily available to the public, you're going to see a high demand of certain events and can tune this throughout. But as a product manager, this is the view I want to see. Again, nothing special about this. Out of the box, as soon as you're using the enterprise search or app search API to query this data, you get these things. So total queries, you can even, for example, we've talked about synonyms, relevance tuning. So if there's a particular field that is probably going to increase the relevance a little bit more, you can tune those things. For example, I doubt, unless it's an exact match, they're going to be searching for date established or that type of thing. But they might and most likely will search for details. Like if we're thinking about redwood forest, they're thinking of these giant trees, right? So I'm going to increase the weight or boost of this field, and that's actually going to change the relevance of a set of documents. So the the relevance is more associated with the description, the name, as well as the state, rather than some of these other fields. So being able to tune the relevance and test the relevance before being deployed into production is a really nice feature. Now, another one that comes with this is result settings. Like you can basically identify which results should appear, how they should appear, that type of thing. And then you get a sample response. So if you wanted to not include certain details regarding the response, then so it makes the developer easier to interact with through that application, you can definitely do so. Again, this is a pretty simple application. It's just Node.js. Now, I know that probably there's going to be other components behind the scenes. You might build the search API through Java or .NET as that search layer rather than including it in the site itself. But like I said, this is just a great way to get started and build something quickly. Another thing we capture from a product manager perspective is you can see the different APIs that are being called. So query suggestion is the API, which is suggesting queries as you're searching. Obviously, the search API is whenever someone hits enter. And then the search UI, again, just shows a great example of how to do some of those things programmatically and then take those on to implement on your own. Now, one thing I should note is, again, all of this detail, all of this data still is stored in Elasticsearch, the #1 search database in the world. It's just that we've built this extraction layer to make it as simple as possible. So as a product owner, if I'm building this product, the product owner should only be using that enterprise search UI to tune search results, promote or update certain documents, and looking at the website visits, that type of thing. Another cool feature in application search is we do provide a crawler. So if you have a website that you'd like to be crawled to provide a search experience on top of, we just introduced a crawler about 6 months ago to easily go and look at that robots.txt file and pull in all the relevant information and provide a search experience on top of that stuff without having to maintain your own document set of internal information that you want to be searchable. So a great example of building a search experience is Docker. So have you ever searched for a container in Docker Hub? Well, most likely you're using Elasticsearch to do so. So some of the key benefits Elasticsearch provides is being able to deliver high performance search across a continuous growing database. So as I unpack that, I think they're making a lot of changes in real time to the documents or the context of what's needed to be searched while still meeting a high demand of search requests. So not only are we reading a lot of data, but writing a lot of data. And we can scale horizontally with Elasticsearch to meet the search demands and monitor the performance of that as well. So in conclusion, as someone who's trying to build out a better search experience and quickly try building a search experience with Elastic as working at the National Park Service, I was able to do all these things. I think actually putting all this together from a demonstration perspective in a deployment perspective, you should be able to do this at least a 24-hour period, at minimum a 24-hour period. But building out, deploying that search UI through app service, deploying Elastic Cloud through Azure Marketplace, and using enterprise search to tune relevancy and those types of things, all built and done within the Azure Marketplace, within Azure itself. So if you're interested, we have a ton of videos, content on how the integrations work. And now I can take this to my manager at the National Park Service and say, hey, I can build out this pretty robust search experience in 8 hours just by using Elastic Cloud to do so. Now, yeah, are there any questions? Or I'm not looking at the chat right now.
There's one question around billing.
Sure. Let me see. Let me pull it up. Where is StreamYard?
So I can read it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is Elk license cost already included in billing on Azure?
So the way it works is, hold on. There's StreamYard. Let me share my screen one more time and I can walk through that. Share. Yeah, nice. Awesome, Trevor. Totally. It should work just like it does within Elastic Cloud as well, provisioning ECE, enterprise search through ECE. So it's basically the same experience. All right, let me jump to that question. I'll share my screen. Sorry for taking it away there for a second. All right, so when you deploy Elastic Cloud, we'll just go ahead and create a deployment. It does give you an idea of this initial size. So this initial size gives you 16 gigabytes of RAM, 480 gigabytes of storage, and then this is the price. And then basically Elastic behind the scenes is communicating with the Azure billing to say this is basically what needs to be charged, whether it's on I think it's monthly basis, right? So extrapolate that out over a month period, and that's the cost of the default configuration. Now, one of the cool things about Elastic is we can scale pretty quickly and scale to handle terabytes and terabytes of storage if you so choose to. So once this deployment is done, you'll jump over here to your specific Elastic Cloud offering, right? So this is the Elastic Cloud console where you can configure how big you want your deployment to be. So if I go down here, it gives us, and I've scaled this instance up specific to Kibana and enterprise search. So when you do that, it'll show you an hourly rate for this particular deployment. So if you make any changes to the deployment through Elastic Cloud, that hourly rate is what's being charged on a monthly basis too. Now, a better way to view this data is if you go to account and billing and usage, you can see in Elastic Cloud what's your current month and month to date usage. So, and then you can look at how much you project or have spent in previous months. So my month to date usage is just under $100 with 26 days left in the billing cycle. So you can assume it will definitely increase, but it gives you an idea of how to monitor the deployments and how much they're costing on a monthly basis. And but ultimately, the billing isn't. We just send this information, the invoices, directly to Azure, and then you're billed through that mechanism. So that answer your question? Oh, I don't want to do that.
I think it did. I don't see any other questions that have come up. So with that, we can wrap it up. If anyone's watching this after the fact, feel free to post your questions here on the video or head to our Elastic Discuss site or community Slack, and our team will get your questions answered. But thank you, Bradley, for your great presentation today. It was great having you. With that, I don't know if you have any final words.
Yeah, no, thank you everyone for joining, and enjoy the new year and stay safe.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone.
Take care.